I've made some progress. Let me tell you about it. In my Nuxt project, I've just recently installed the Playwright core. Well, that was installed actually in an earlier video. So it's been in the build, but I haven't made use of it until recently. I recently ran the create Playwright script, and that produced a folder in my build with an example spec file. I've modified this example. In fact, I should rename it because it's kind of mine now. And I will call it home page content spec TS. Also in my package.json, you'll notice that I've installed the nuxt-ui module. Oops, that was not supposed to happen yet. We'll get to that in a moment. What's happening here is that I've got the darn thing running. Let's turn without distraction. Yes, the nuxt-ui module is in the build and it's configured in my nuxt config ts. And what this does is Nuxt is now configured to inject the nuxt-ui or content, no, not nuxt-ui material, let's say, into the DOM. And one of the first things that it does, let's get this server running. I will start pnpm dev and open my localhost to 3000. One of the first things it does is presents, there we go. I don't know why that other website opened. nuxt-ui will detect my dark mode or light mode of the operating system, and it injects material into the head of the HTML document. There we go. So this is dark mode now, and you'll notice that in my app.view file, there's just a simple heading with the word hello in it. And if I open the dev tools here, you'll see that there are elements. First of all, this class equals dark. That is added by this nuxt-ui configuration. Also in the head, there is a style with an ID of nuxt-ui colors, and it defines root colors and dark mode colors. Again, that is injected into the document because on the left-hand side, this configuration here, I'll prove it to you. We're going to that array like so, and I'll comment out the nuxt-ui line of code. And now in the browser on the right, you're going to notice there will be no dark mode, and those elements that we just saw in the DOM will no longer be there. The server has done its work. You'll notice it's light mode. Notice that there's no class on this HTML element. Notice in the head there is no such style block with the ID of whatever it was, nuxt-ui colors. If I add this back, and by the way, we're now going to write a Playwright test to confirm that the nuxt-ui content or material is injected into the DOM. Let's do that next. So I am writing this test after the fact. So I've enabled nuxt-ui in the configuration of Nuxt, and now I'm going to write a test for that. So I'm going to close the Nuxt configuration, close the terminal, and I can close the browser. Let's get back to my IDE for a moment. In the terminal, we will run npm exec playwright test. And what this will do is launch Playwright, and it will execute, it'll evaluate this test. And it'll do that in the terminal. We won't see much output here, all right? And I'll show next how to watch and how to view the output in a browser. So it took a while for Playwright to get started, but it's running one test using one worker, just the Chromium worker. I'm not going to run the test in multiple browsers. And what happened was this test was executed. This expectation was not met because we expected that the head would contain a tag called, an element called style with an ID of nuxt-ui colors, and that would have a count of 0. But that's not true because we saw that there was a count of one of those style elements in the DOM because nuxt-ui is currently enabled. How does Playwright show itself to you? What is the user interface of Playwright? Because this test failed, it immediately launched in my browser. The reporter opened up and showed us some detail about why this test failed. If I adjust the test to pass, well here, close the browser, adjust the test to pass, rerun the Playwright test. This time it opened the browser to show us the activity in Chromium. It loaded the page, it went through the expectations, and it succeeded and showed us here with a green check mark that the test has passed. Also in the terminal, it indicates that the test was passed. Now this little window here is produced by an extension which I installed, and let's have a look at that. Not now, but later. I want to show you the Playwright UI. So if we add this little switch to the command, it will execute Playwright, run the tests, and it will show us the UI. Now this is a Playwright UI. It's kind of goofy because I'm running this build in Windows subsystem for Linux, and so the Linux subsystem is going to produce this little window, and it doesn't look like a Windows window. It doesn't look like a Mac window. It's a Linux window appearing on my Microsoft Windows desktop, which is really cool. Now, in this window, let me just resize it so we can see what's going on here. It's an awkward window, that's for sure. But notice all it has done is it's run the Playwright, opened the UI, it's loading. There, it found the tests, and now I can run the test. So in this UI, I have some options to watch the files. This actually doesn't work as smoothly as I hoped, but let me just run all the tests with that little green button. And in this UI, you'll see over here that the browser will load, this little Safari browser, or I guess that's a Chrome browser, and it indicated that the title was found. And it reported the steps of the test in this little UI. Not bad, but we can do better. So I'm going to close that UI, and now I'm going to show you the extension, the Playwright test for VS Code extension. And this provides us a little better developer experience. I've already installed it, so we don't have to do that again. Now I'm just going to open it over here and show you all about it. With this extension, then, you see I can browse the test suite. I have options up here to either show the output. What that will do is open this little window on the right-hand corner, or I can hide the output. I don't need that. I don't know how to hide this now. There we go. Good enough. I also have the option to run the tests or run in a continuous manner. So this will watch changes to the test files and rerun the tests as we go. Let's just turn that on for now. It'll ask me how do I want to do it. Do I want it Playwright Run or Playwright Debug? I'm going to select Playwright Run and click OK, and it starts running the tests. Notice because I have the Show Trace Viewer selected, it is showing me the trace. So if I select this option over here, I believe our browser will show us the test trace. Taking a little time, and there we go. Notice this test trace viewer is basically the same as the other UI that we saw, the Linux window UI, except this is now in my preferred browser, which I like. I like that. I have more control of this. If I turn off Show Trace Viewer, it'll run in silent mode. So let's just change the test here. I'll say we expect this to have, I'll just hide the line. The test runner will automatically restart because a change was observed in the file. And the trace viewer did not open this time. If I click on Show Browser and rerun the test, I'll modify the test file. That will trigger a test run. And this time a browser will open and we will observe all the activity in the browser. Again, it's one of those sort of weird Linux windows that's piped into Microsoft Windows through the Windows Linux subsystem. There we go. It doesn't render properly on my screen. That's kind of goofy. Nonetheless, I can hide that, and I actually prefer the trace viewer anyways, or in headless mode and just run them silently. Now, what's interesting to me is I'm going to run them silently and open up the site is running in port 3000. And as I modify things in my code, you'll notice, let's go to the nuxt fig, and I'll hide the nuxt-ui. It changes in my browser. It reruns the tests. Actually, it didn't, because the test file didn't change, but I can run the tests here. And I like this actually, because now I can have my browser open and I can be looking through the DOM. I can be writing tests in my IDE based on what I'm seeing in the DOM. And isn't that lovely? Let's just, before I close the video, read what this test actually does. So to shrink this window over here and give a little more space for VS Code, this test uses Playwright to confirm that the home page has a heading and nuxt-ui material or whatever. Goes to the URL localhost 3000. I wonder if I can just do that as well. I cannot. Looks like I have to define, so that's an invalid URL. Looks like I'll define that explicitly as a string. And then it says, go to the page and look through the elements of the page by role. Now this is interesting. It's by role according to ARIA tags and screen reader roles. Rather than, you can also use selectors like CSS selectors, but this is an interesting way to run through the page. And so go to the roles of headings, find one of them, and expect that a heading has a text of hello, which it does. This is a H1 and it says hello. So that expectation succeeds. The next expectation I've written is to use a page locator, and this is it's like a CSS selector. So it goes into the head element and it asks for a style element with an ID of nuxt-ui colors, and it should, and this produces an array. So the page locator returns an array, which we expect should have a count of 1, and that's true. So it's true because, let me show you again, over here in the elements, we can see that the head has a style tag with an ID of nuxt-ui colors. So there's the test. First Playwright test I've ever written. Thanks for watching.